Hi, friends. I'm here today again for another interview for National Diabetes Awareness Month, where we're going to talk about some themes surrounding my forthcoming book, Chronic Hope, Raising a Child with Chronic Illness with Grace, Courage, and Love, which releases on April 13th next year. So as if you were here last Monday, you know that every Monday in November, I'm going to be releasing another video with interviewing one of my friends who also has a child with T1D. This is in honor of National Diabetes Awareness Month. And we're just gonna hear together how each one of these friends handles being a caregiver and managing all that, the burden of care with a child with such a complex disease. So every Monday you can look for another new video to come out on Facebook, Instagram, on my YouTube channel, or over on my website at bonnieoneil.com. So let's get started today. Today I'm with my good friend, Heather Giacoio, and Heather and I have known each other for about 9 years, I guess, as long as her daughter, Sarah, has been living with type 1. Sarah was diagnosed as a 5-year-old, just like my son, Austin. And Heather and I have served on the board of JDRF in the Greater Delaware Valley chapter for a number of years. Don't remember, 6+, I'm guessing. We both have a shared passion for outreach when it comes to families living with a chronic illness. We also both love all things France and Frenchy and going over to France. And also, we both had the opportunity to live in London with our families of 5, both have 3 children as well, for a couple of years. So I guess we're like, I don't know, sisters of a different mother or something like that. So I'm just thrilled to be here with Heather today. And so Heather and I are going to talk about an emotion that I think every parent of a child, certainly with T1D, but probably with any chronic illness, has to face, and that is fear. And I know when my son was first diagnosed, I thought my greatest fear was going to be injecting him with insulin. And I quickly realized that there was a whole lot more to be afraid of. And if I wasn't careful, I could spend every single day, every single moment of every day living afraid. So we're going to talk about fear. We're going to talk about courage, how to find courage. Heather, I know that you've experienced fear as well. And so would you share with us a little bit about what some of your fears have been for yourself or your daughter? And how does living with those kind of fears, how have they affected you?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
The past, 9 years, we have, my husband, myself, and Sarah managed her diabetes. Sarah's now 14. She was 5. When your child's diagnosed that young, you are the caregiver.
Mm.
And, my fear I think about on a daily, hourly basis is what that is going to look like for her in the future.
Mm.
Will she become overwhelmed
Mm.
with dealing? It's a lot to deal with. I always say it's a full-time job. And, now we have, the 3 of us have each other to bounce things off of. What would you bolus for that? What would you do for that? And, and I always say, she always will have us, obviously. But when you're an adult, you're not always calling your mom to check in. And, now, that is, but it's a lot to deal with.
Yeah.
A lot of, insurance companies and trying to get your supplies and, hey, can someone just grab me a juice? I'm feeling low. So my fear is, right now we all manage it together. And I worry for the future. I worry for her to say, this is too much. This is overwhelming, because it is overwhelming. We all have our days where some days can go, wow, that was not like it wasn't even around. And then the next day, we are struggling with, lows all day and, low blood sugar. And it's just, it can be overwhelming. And I fear the overwhelming for her as she gets older.
Yeah, diabetes burnout is a real phenomenon, and it's very hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you asked, the ways that I how do I, help with that? It's caused my own anxiety.
Mm.
My own anxiety. You're laying awake at night and thinking, what is this going to look like? She's at a friend's house, and you're thinking, we can't just send our kids out to without that fear of what if something bad happens. Is she surrounded by people who understand? Do her friends know? Do the coaches know? Her
Right.
teachers know? So that if something happens, somebody knows what to do. So you're always planning ahead. Like your child will say, can I go to a birthday party? And it's typical. We just, oh yeah, just, with my other two children, sure, go. But there's so much that goes into what is that going to look like? But you don't want to tell them, you don't want to share so all these things that go behind the scenes to make it work for them.
Right.
But also letting them know too, that there is things that have to go in because you're teaching them the future. You're teaching them what this is going to be like when they're not with you.
Right. And I'm sure you found too, you have to be careful what you say so that your words aren't laced with fear to
Right.
projecting your own fear as well.
Right. Right. Where you're definitely, everything's fine, but we just have to remember we can't leave without our juice. We have to, you got to have these things on you. Like they say, it's a manageable disease that has to be managed. I feel like I'm a broken record, right? It's
Exactly.
manageable, but we're going to, you have to manage. And part of managing is taking things with you.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
And
yeah,
how have
I
you handled?
definitely can find humor.
Mhm.
Humor helps.
Yeah.
Definitely humor with, you know, eating something and you're like, I didn't know they found a cure yet. Wait, you don't have to dose that, and then Sarah laughs and we move on. So it's
Right.
definitely not, you have to find the humor in it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yes.
but I definitely have had my own fear, anxieties. But being in with a community, finding my people that are my go-tos,
Mm.
that I know that if I'm having a situation, how would you handle this? And that's what it's allowed me to help with people like you. You were one of the first people, well, you were the first one that even heard about me, heard about us, and we didn't even know each other and reached out to me.
Yeah. I think it was
Um,
my across the street neighbor who connected us.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 And I talked to you numerous times over the phone before we even met up,
Yeah.
but it was somebody who gets it. And those are how I can say, okay, I'm not the only one who deals with this.
Yeah. So how has it been plugged into a community like that? In our case, it was JDRF and the other moms and other parents that we met along the way that were helpful to us. How has that been helpful for you in dealing with your fear?
Hearing other stories,
Mm.
hearing, Austin went away to college and was, did successful at Bucknell and now is home and has a job. And so I see, because for me, that's the next one, college. What's that going to look like? But then I know, within our community, how many are at college and are successful in colleges, yeah, and have challenges, but
Right.
all these tips that you have shared with me about what to do, things that having plans ahead of time, so that helps, that relieves it, and just seeing how successful that kids are at college,
Right.
you
Right.
know
And then
or
that helps
having
you be
worked,
able to deal with the fear of the future that you're imagining
and
now.
that's exactly it, the fear of the future. But I see that it does happen, and everybody says it does happen. But when you're in your own little world, at night thinking, what is this going to look like? And
Right.
then you hear the success, then that helps. So it helps talking about it. It helps being involved. Another big piece for me, advocating, teaching, to advocate.
Yeah.
I am a huge advocate.
And what has
Talk
that meant for you? What do you do? Can you describe for folks what being an advocate is and how you benefit from that personally?
It's showing my child that there is nothing that can stop you.
Mm.
So if somebody says, but you can't do that, but yes, I can do that. And this is why I can do that.
Mhm.
That's been, getting back to how managing the fear, when I see my child doing it, when I hear her say, Mom, I told my math teacher I couldn't take the test because my blood sugar was too low. I'm like, awesome. You know, you're standing up and you're saying, this is what I need. So that is, you know, that is advocating for yourself when some, you know, so, you know, advocacy is a huge, huge, you know,
And
I
you've
want,
actually advocated in front of our government leaders, haven't you?
mhm,
With
yeah,
Sarah.
yeah.
Yeah.
And showing them that things, you know, sharing your story and sharing what you've been through.
And did that give you, does that give you a boost of courage in the midst of the fear, knowing that you've been
Absolutely.
heard and listened to?
Absolutely. When you see that change can happen
Yeah.
because you advocate.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, you know, I am amazed, you know, that we've all gotten together and been able to do this, and look what's happened, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah,
Um,
we've seen real change come from advocating just in terms of getting artificial pancreas device systems pushed through more quickly, getting the price of insulin pushed down,
yep.
things
Yeah.
that were very tangible that we've seen happen just in the last couple of years by using our voices.
Right.
And I
Right.
agree, I think that really does help with the fear, because when you see change, you know it's not always going to be this way.
Right. And I think as, you know, adults, children, it empowers you.
Yeah,
It definitely is empowering to say, stand up for yourself. Don't just
yeah,
accept what somebody else who doesn't understand
yeah.
said,
Yeah. And
you
then
know?
seeing your daughter pick up on that too and learn how to be courageous in the face of what could be very frightening. It's frightening to take a math test on any day, but with
Right.
a low blood sugar.
Right.
And so to
Right.
be able to stand up and use her voice
And
courageously.
say, yeah, I
Yeah.
can't go to gym today. My sugar's too, you know, I can't, I just sit out for 10 minutes and, you
Yeah.
know, but she's had the support, which is amazing. You know, I think it's important to have your supports, have your teachers, have your, that you have your go-tos. We always call them your go-tos. Who's your go-to? When she was younger, I'd always say, who's your go-to?
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
she's my go-to. Okay, then we're going to go to her when I'm not here.
It's an
Yeah,
awful lot of really good training that mom and dad have to do in these earlier years so
yeah,
that hopefully they follow suit when it's on them.
right.
And it sounds like Sarah's doing
Yeah,
exactly that, which is
yeah.
great.
Well,
Yeah,
that's what I always, you know, we're teaching her now for her future
right.
when she's not with us.
Well said.
You know, you know, when she's could be in a college in a different state, we're
Right,
teaching you now, you know. And I
right.
always say, I'm not trying to be a pain, but I'm just showing you, you
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
you know.
Exactly. Very well said. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, but it is.
Well, Heather was one of the beta readers for my book, meaning that she read the entire book cover to cover before the manuscript, before I submitted it to the publisher. And I will always be so grateful to you for that. So I'm wondering if there was a particular section of the book that resonated with you and that you hope that, or you think that maybe some of the listeners today might really benefit from.
Yeah. Um, well, one thing I want to point out, what I resonated with me a lot was the reflection that you have at the end of each chapter.
Mhm.
That to me is so important, and I love that. It made me think so much after, you know, a scenario, sharing something that had happened with you in Austin,
Mm.
um, to be able to say, gosh, that happened to me too. Or
Mm.
just that whole reflection piece.
Yeah.
I look forward to that point, to because while I'm reading, I'm thinking, oh, I hope she has to reflect on that. I want to reflect on that because I want to think about that more. You know, we don't just
Great.
stop and think about things,
Yeah.
but to have that to say, you know, reflect on that.
Yeah.
And it makes you take that time to say, yeah, because, you know, we read other books and they're not asking us to reflect on it. It's
Mhm.
just you move on. But with this, I took that time to reflect on it. I
Oh,
wanted
that's
to,
great.
so that is amazing. And I loved being able to take that time to do that. Um, the other that resonated with me with, you know, having, um, you know, a situation, a scenario that you had given with Austin, with not being able to go somewhere or to be able to do something.
The school
And
field trip.
yeah, a field trip.
Yeah.
And it's painful. It's painful when people tell your child, who you tell all the time, there's nothing you can't do.
Yeah.
And then somebody puts that barrier up to your child and you become like, "Ugh, what do you mean they can't do?" I mean, that's, Sarah will even say like, "Mom, don't get crazy." But I'm like, what do you mean? What happened? But that barrier, you're telling your child you can do anything. And then somebody says you can't. So that scenario, that the story that you gave, I felt like I was there, like feeling that, how you must have felt
Yeah.
to have somebody say, because that scenario happened to us as well. A passing comment. Well, of course she can't go. What do you mean she can't go? Why can't she go? you know? So,
How did you deal with that?
well, somebody taught me a really good tip early on. I don't know, but turn your anger into action.
That's a wonderful tip.
Yeah. So I don't get angry now. I don't get angry.
Yeah.
I turn it into an action.
Beautiful.
Then I let them know, now this is how it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to do this, and this is how we're going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me is so powerful when I hear that, when I hear a scenario. I have to get the whole story.
Yeah.
Right. And then I start to say, where can we make this so this doesn't happen again?
Right. Right. Well, that's beautiful. And that ties in so well with your whole passion for advocating, because that's exactly what that is.
Yeah.
We're not going to take that. No, we're going
Yeah.
to turn that into action and make a difference.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, and when I hear my own child say that, we used to, early on when Sarah was diagnosed, it would be, we hear things. Oh, did you give her a lot of sugar when she was little? Is that how she has diabetes?
Right.
Like, no. Yes, I poured packets down her throat. No. So now I used to get angry at that. Now I don't. Now I say, you know what? Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease. It's a quick line, I mean, I could go in way in depth if I wanted to, but nobody wants to hear that. But no, it's an autoimmune disease. And it was nothing that, that we had done. So now I even hear Sarah saying that now, like, teach that. If they're not understanding it and they're making a comment that upsets you, and I've said that to her, I used to get mad, and it's okay to get mad, but now we turn that into, I'm just going to teach you. I'm going to, give you, and then people are actually, oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And
they're grateful. They're grateful for the education, I find.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it also makes you more sensitive to other people's illnesses and diseases that they deal with.
Right.
So, when you hear somebody else has something, you're willing to hear more about it. Like, wow, I want to know that, so I don't make that mistake and I don't make a comment like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like a beautiful way to turn fear into courage, into action. And that's the best way, I think, of dealing with fear, and because that takes us from a place of despair to a place of hope, which is what we want.
Right.
So Heather, I can't thank you enough for joining me today for this interview series for Chronic Hope, Raising a Child with Chronic Illness with Grace, Courage, and Love. So as I said, it releases on April 13th, but the ebook is coming out earlier on January 12th, which is actually the day after the 99th anniversary of the first time that insulin was used in the world. And so that's a lot to celebrate too. Talk about turning fear into action. So Chronic Hope is available now for pre-order on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And also, if you wanted 2 advanced chapters of the book, hop on over to my website, bonnieoneal.com, and you can sign up and get 2 free chapters that way. So thank you so much for listening in, and I'll see you next Monday. Bye.